More than 250 miles from the quarries where granite was cut beneath the scorching heat of southern Egypt, there stands a structure that should never have existed. It lies buried deep beneath the desert floor of Abydos, hidden directly behind one of the most magnificent temples in the country. This is the Osirion, a monument that challenges almost everything we have been taught about archaeology and ancient history. Here, in the heart of the desert, you will not find mud bricks or the manageable blocks of limestone commonly associated with Egyptian architecture. Instead, the structure is built from enormous masses of red Aswan granite, some weighing as much as 100 tons. They were fitted together with remarkable precision, without a single drop of mortar. The joints are so tight that even today, the thinnest blade cannot be inserted between them. This is not merely decorative architecture. It is engineering on a megalithic scale, a display of strength and precision that appears to exceed what should have been possible with the simple tools of the ancient world. The doorways inside the Osirion rise more than 12 feet high, creating proportions that make the human body seem strangely small. When the structure was first uncovered from beneath the sand in 1902 and 1903, experienced excavators such as Edouard Naville and Margaret Murray were genuinely astonished. These were trained professionals with decades of field experience, working under the careful supervision of Flinders Petrie, the man who helped establish the foundations of modern archaeological methodology. They were not amateurs searching for sensational discoveries. They examined what had been exposed before them and reached a conclusion that later textbooks would quietly push aside. They did not believe that the pharaoh officially associated with the monument had actually built it. The reason was simple. The Osirion looked nothing like anything around it. It seemed completely out of place within the richly decorated world of dynastic Egypt, where walls were usually covered with reliefs and hieroglyphs. Standing at the edge of an excavation pit that was slowly filling with groundwater, staring down at the bare megalithic stonework, the excavators understood that they might be touching the remains of another age. It appeared to belong to a period whose technical abilities had somehow been forgotten by accepted history. Why would a structure of such extraordinary scale and difficulty never appear in the proud records of the Egyptian dynasties? The official explanation we are given today may be little more than a convenient arrangement designed to fill gaps that cannot otherwise be explained. To understand why the Osirion remains so unsettling, we must examine what stands directly beside it. The Temple of Seti I is a masterpiece of royal splendor, yet it carries a mystery of an entirely different kind. The site lies deep within the desert near the modern town of El Araba El Madfuna. For more than 3,000 years, this place was known as Abydos, one of the most sacred landscapes in the ancient Egyptian imagination. It was the spiritual center of the cult of Osiris, the god of death and resurrection. To the ancient Egyptians, Abydos was not simply a place of sand and stone. It was a threshold to the world beyond, where the barrier separating the living from the dead was believed to become thin enough to cross. Rising proudly in front of the Osirion and dominating the entire area is the Temple of Seti I. Built around 1300 BC, it is a masterpiece of the New Kingdom. Its attribution to Seti I is beyond serious dispute. Nearly every surface inside the temple is covered with intricate reliefs, vivid paintings, and finely carved bands of hieroglyphic text. The temple is exactly what we would expect from its period. It is elegant, lavish, technically refined, and filled with royal self-importance. We know who built it, why it was constructed, and how its design fits within the architecture of its age. Yet the moment you walk behind this magnificent building and descend through the long passage leading toward the Osirion, your entire sense of reality begins to change. The contrast between the two neighboring structures is so extreme that it becomes almost physical. If the temple in front resembles a richly illustrated manuscript filled with gold and color, then the Osirion feels like a raw and severe expression of perfect geometry. There are no painted scenes of gods surrounding its pillars. There are no continuous bands of reliefs incorporated into the original design. Instead, 10 enormous granite columns stand square, bare, and unadorned, supporting horizontal beams that may weigh as much as 100 tons. The beauty of the Osirion does not come from decoration. It comes from the overwhelming presence of stone, and from the brutal silence created by its scale. It feels less like a temple, and more like the exposed skeleton of something far older. The excavation did not merely uncover a building. It revealed what seemed to be the remains of a structure belonging to an entirely different age. Why would the same king, the same architects, and the same gifted workshops that created the splendor of the temple in front suddenly turn around and build such a stark and strangely simple structure directly behind it? The difference goes far beyond artistic style. It points to a deeper unease that mainstream archaeology often attempts to conceal beneath theories of deliberate imitation. Yet, when we examine the actual figures behind the weight, transportation distance, and precision of these stones, the elegance of those theories begins to fracture beyond repair. The unease felt by the first excavators did not arise from abstract speculation. It came from measurable facts involving weight, distance, and tolerances calculated in fractions of an inch. The central hall of the Osirion was constructed around 10 massive granite pillars that supported horizontal stone beams known as architraves. Some of these beams weighed as much as 100 tons. To understand the true scale of 100 tons, we need a point of comparison. At the Great Pyramid of Giza, the most famous stone construction achievement of the ancient world, the average blocks weigh between 2 and 15 tons. Even the largest stones inside the king's chamber weigh only about 50 to 80 tons. The beams of the Osirion exceed even those figures. They were not raised high onto a growing mountain of rubble where ramps could provide access. They were lowered into a chamber deep beneath the groundwater level, within a confined space that offered no obvious construction advantage. None of this granite was available locally. It is red Aswan granite, one of the hardest and densest stones valued by the ancient Egyptians. Yet its quarries lie 250 miles south of Abydos. The conventional account suggests that these blocks were floated down the Nile on barges, then dragged across land to the construction site. But the practical details are not so easily explained. A beam weighing 100 tons is not like a single statue or obelisk whose journey could be celebrated as a unique achievement. The Osirion contains many such beams. Each one had to be separated from the bedrock, transported along the Nile aboard a vessel strong enough to carry it, and then placed perfectly level inside a water-filled excavation with joints precise enough to resemble the edge of a blade. What makes this even stranger is that the Egyptians were never modest about their accomplishments. Whenever a pharaoh achieved something difficult, long inscriptions were often carved into temple walls to celebrate his devotion, strength, and authority. The Temple of Seti I, directly in front of the Osirion, is a perfect example of this royal pride, filled with images proclaiming military victories and divine favor. Yet, the Osirion, an engineering achievement of truly extraordinary proportions, contains no such declaration. There is no inscription announcing that the king conquered the weight of the earth and raised these immense stones into position. The monument that should have inspired the greatest pride is also the monument that remains completely silent about its own creation. Then we must confront the problem of the water. When excavators opened the central hall, they found it flooded with groundwater. The accepted explanation claims that this was an intentional architectural feature designed to represent the primeval waters that existed at the beginning of creation. Yet the stonework of the Osirion tells a different story. The obsessive precision of its mortarless joints is the kind of craftsmanship intended to remain visible and dry in open air. Builders do not shape stones weighing 100 tons to within millimeters of accuracy, only for the finished result to remain forever hidden beneath murky water. The silence of the dynastic records, combined with the practical absurdity of constructing such precision stonework underwater, suggests that we may be looking at a monument originally designed for another purpose, perhaps by another civilization. But if Seti I did not build it, why does his name appear on the granite? To defend the accepted chronology, modern archaeologists have proposed a sophisticated explanation. They argue that the Osirion appears ancient because it was deliberately designed to appear ancient. According to this theory, when Pharaoh Seti I constructed a symbolic tomb for the god of death, he intentionally looked back toward a distant past and imitated the massive, primitive style of an earlier age. Its simplicity was an artistic choice, while the crushing weight of its stones was a carefully staged statement meant to connect the king with eternity. It is an elegant theory because it explains the monument's strangeness without requiring any change to the dates presented in textbooks. But elegance is not the same as evidence. The moment we place this theory under pressure, fractures begin to appear. These are the same problems that disturbed the original excavators. Consider the inscriptions, the only surviving anchors used to date the structure. The name of Seti I does indeed appear within the Osirion, but how does it appear? In the magnificent temple in front, every inscription and royal title was carefully planned and integrated into the architecture from the beginning. Inside the Osirion, however, the inscriptions appear awkwardly placed upon surfaces that were never prepared to receive them. They were carved into stone that had already been finished and polished, surfaces that appear to have been intended to remain completely bare. The first excavators observed that these inscriptions did not appear to be part of the original decoration. They looked more like a name scratched onto a structure that had existed long before the hand that carved it. If the workers of Seti I had truly built the Osirion from its foundations, they would not have made the name of their king appear like an afterthought. This fact reverses the entire logic of its dating. A name carved onto a wall does not tell you who built that wall. It only tells you who wished to be associated with it. The implication is clear. Seti I may have discovered the Osirion, claimed it, and placed his name upon a monument that was already ancient in his own time. This would not have been an act of construction. It would have been an attempt to claim authority from a distant past. The theory of deliberate imitation also faces a major problem of technical consistency. The ability to quarry, transport, and fit stones weighing 100 tons with the precision seen at the Osirion is not something that appears once and then vanishes without a trace. Yet within the vast archaeological record of the New Kingdom, the period believed to have produced the Osirion, no other structure displays the same engineering methods. Other temples, however magnificent, used smaller blocks, applied mortar when necessary, and followed a completely different architectural language. The accepted theory asks us to believe that a civilization reached an extraordinary peak of technical mastery, used it only once to imitate a legendary past, and then abandoned it forever. But engineering knowledge does not normally function that way. Edouard Naville may have been correct when he declared in 1914 that the structure belonged to an age before the beginning of the dynastic records. His skepticism did not come from abstract theory. It came from direct contact with the stones. He saw inscriptions that seemed strangely out of place upon a system of megalithic geometry that the Egyptians of that period could not simply reproduce elsewhere. The scale of the Osirion introduces another detail that makes even the most cautious explanations appear increasingly strange. Its doorways rise more than 12 feet high. The vast passages and horizontal beams are positioned at heights that make a person standing beneath them appear unusually small. We know that the people of dynastic Egypt were not a race of giants. Seti I, despite his immense political power, possessed the ordinary physical dimensions of a human being. A conventional memorial tomb was designed for a specific individual, a symbolic resting place connected with the remains of one person. Why, then, would its architects create doorways and halls on a scale that makes the human figure resemble a child, wandering through a space built for something far larger than any known population described by history? The usual archaeological answer is grandeur. The scale was exaggerated to express royal power and divine majesty. Yet grandeur in dynastic Egyptian architecture normally developed upward through towering columns, monumental gateways, and structures designed to dominate the skyline. The Osirion is entirely different. Its proportions create the impression that the space was shaped around the dimensions of an enormous occupant, one whose size does not correspond to any human being recorded in the dynastic sources. Even those who lived much closer to the age of the monument did not automatically accept what modern textbooks now present as fact. A famous Greek geographer who visited Abydos during the 1st century BC described the Osirion as a monument that was already profoundly ancient. He regarded it as a relic of a distant age and showed no intention of crediting its construction to Seti I. When all these pieces are placed together, the picture is far less orderly than we are usually told. We see a structure that appears ancient because it may truly be ancient. We see a megalithic engineering system designed for a dry and illuminated environment, not for a stagnant pool of water. And we see a legacy that may have been discovered by a later king, who then attempted to claim it by carving his name into its surface like a signature added long after the work was complete. The most troubling fact is that the evidence is slowly disappearing. Each year, the groundwater rises a little higher, swallowing more of the lower stonework and eroding the precise joints that might one day settle the debate. The advancing water is destroying the physical evidence before any official institution is willing to confront it with complete honesty. We do not know who built the Osirion, but we do know that the accepted explanations are struggling to survive contact with the physical reality of the monument. So, I will leave the question with you. Based on everything we have uncovered, which explanation do you believe? Was the Osirion a memorial tomb built by Pharaoh Seti I? Was it an elaborate attempt by New Kingdom architects to imitate the style of a much older age? Or is it the surviving legacy of a lost megalithic civilization that existed before the age of the pharaohs? Share your answer in the comments and tell me which impossible structure we should enter next.